So just going to chat a little bit with all of you about sustainability, specifically from the lens of a city and also from the lens of infrastructure and how we build our cities. And I'll note a few things before I get into some of the sample project highlights that we've got going on. None of the things that I'm going to talk about I've invented or we've invented or we created for the first time. These are all ideas that we've got out there. And they come from conversations in rooms like this with people who build things and who make things and consultants and neighborhood leaders and everybody. And I don't think that anything we do is necessarily rocket science, but my job and our job is to implement and do the things and just do cool stuff and have it make sense and be valuable to people and improve quality of life. So things we're doing are cool, but they're also helping people's lives in a lot of ways. And sustainability is sort of the key tenet of all that. But there are a lot of layers of the benefits that we get from all this. So I'm just going to highlight a few cool things that we're working on in Kansas City. And these are things that you're going to see in a lot of places, in a lot of cities. And previously, before I was this role, city manager of Kansas City, I had the same role in Jersey City, New Jersey. And I did almost all the same things. And I got to come to a new city and do them all again because this is where cities are. These are the things that we're thinking about. These are the types of projects that we want to do. And we've got to be leaders when it comes to sustainability. We've got such a high potential for impact and making a difference and making change and leading by example. A solar array that we're working on, our municipal fleet, converting it to zero emissions, battery electric vehicles, planting new trees, small things like changing light bulbs can go a big way. Building energy efficiency codes for new construction is a big one also, and transit. So these are the few quick things that I'm going to touch on here in Kansas City. So the first one is our solar array. This is a project that we've been working on for quite some time, and we haven't even put shovels in the ground yet, but we're getting close to that point. We've issued an RFP. We're evaluating responses. We've got some great responses, and we're about to sort of press play on moving things forward and starting the clock on building something here. So you'll see in the right side of the screen here, that's the Kansas City Airport. And to the left side is an area that we've identified as suitable for solar development. There's about 3,100 acres of land in that highlighted box area next to the airport. Fun fact, the entire property of the airport is about 12,000 acres. It's the size of Manhattan, New York, the Kansas City airport. So imagine 8 million, Manhattan, 1 million or 2 people living in this one spot. We've got just grass. We've got some cows to keep the deer away. It's not quite the same amount of density. But when I got to town and we started thinking about things we should do and what we can do with our resources, one of the biggest resources that we've got is our land in Kansas City. We have so much land. And this is interesting land because there's really not a lot of things you can do on land next to an airport. You can't build buildings really, and no one wants to live there or have an office building there. Some warehousing and shipping and logistics kinds of stuff. But we've just got so much land. So the thought was, well, what are our biggest challenges and our priorities as a city, but also as a region? And we thought about how in Missouri, 70% of electricity comes from carbon-based sources, 70%. It's like 40 or 45% from coal. And imagine the air quality improvements and impacts just from transitioning some of that over to some other zero emissions type of source, solar. And so solar, obviously, we thought about wind and solar and started to study it, and there's not quite enough wind in this area. Solar was the next go-to. We did a feasibility study. The study estimates that we can produce up to 500 megawatts, build up to 500 megawatts of solar panels on this site. That could power about 70,000 homes, average size homes, which is about a third of our city. What an amazing impact that we can have on our city just from a bunch of fields with cows in them. There are, of course, a lot of logistics and things that we have to think through when we move this forward. Infrastructure improvements in the area. We need to upgrade transmission lines. We need to think about the impact on the environment in the area. There's topography issues and there's trees there, and we've got to think about how to, not remove one environmentally beneficial element such as trees and replace it with another. We're trying to do it all. So there are a lot of things we got to think about, but and the beauty of this project at a high level is that it theoretically could pay for itself. The solar panels generate energy, which is then sold to somebody somewhere, and it makes money, some amount of money. Now, we're not trying to make a profit off this as a city. That's not our job. Our job is to provide benefit to our taxpayers. And so one of our goals, in addition to the green energy, the clean energy, the zero emissions component there, is trying to reduce costs of energy for our residents. So most energy production facilities are far away from city centers in density. This brings it closer. And then theoretically, there's less amount of infrastructure you're going to need to move those electrons from the production facility to where people are using it. And so theoretically, this would be a cheaper source of energy. Also, we haven't figured out the ownership structure yet, but if the city's going to own it, we're not going to try to make profit off of it, obviously. So there's another layer of cost reduction in there as well. We'll see. We're not sure where it's all going to go yet, but it's such an exciting project for us. This could be one of the largest solar arrays in the United States. Right now, a lot of the solar arrays you're seeing are 200-300 megawatts. There's a few that are larger than that, but if you're going to make a top 10 list, hopefully in the next 4 or 5 years, you're going to see us right up there. It's very exciting for us. Electric vehicles. So yesterday, actually, the picture on the left here, this is sort of a weird collage, I know, but the picture on the left, we had a press conference yesterday, actually, announcing 45 new zero emissions, fully battery electric vehicles going to our fire department. And think about the types of vehicles that they use. Some of them will be responding to fires in the SUV size, but we're replacing these older, like Chevy Tahoes, just very inefficient vehicles with smaller zero emissions battery electric vehicles. And we actually did our own internal analysis of the overall cost of the life of the vehicle. So it includes not just the purchase price, which sometimes, yes, is higher for an electric vehicle, but fuel costs and maintenance costs. And we've actually estimated that each of those vehicles saves us on average $14,000 over the useful life of a vehicle. So yes, you may be paying a little bit more for the electric vehicle up front, but our analysis for the way we're using them shows that it's actually going to be cheaper in the long run, which is great. And also not to mention the no emissions at the tailpipe. And one of the complaints and sort of pushbacks that people get when talking about electric cars is, well, you're plugging it in, but where do the electrons come from when you plug it in? A lot of places, the main energy source is coal, natural gas. And so previous slide, as you can see, hopefully we're going to make the entire supply chain end to end from where you make the electron to where you use it carbon free. So solar at the airport, electric cars, removing it all from the whole process, all that carbon. We've got a policy in place in Kansas City, which cities are starting to adopt some sort of policy that says we want to make our fleets zero emissions, battery electric, or some other type of fuel source. And the way we're doing it in Kansas City, and the way I did it in Jersey City also, is to say that starting at a certain date, all new vehicles must be zero emissions, battery electric, where available. So not to say that we have to force everyone to replace every vehicle. It would just be too much of a cost. There's some vehicles that you don't need to replace every 5 years or 10 years or even 20 years. We've got some very old vehicles out there. And then also, there are not electric options that are suitable. So maybe there is an electric dump truck, but maybe it costs 5 or 6 times as much. Is that really going to be worth it for something that only drives a handful of miles a year? Is some kind of, backup vehicle or something like that. But for the daily drivers and the ones that get a lot of miles, like these, like the passenger vehicles, we're reducing the size of them and we're converting them to electric. But we're trying to be creative with other types of vehicles. We've got a street sweeper on the way that's electric. That's sort of a new thing that you're seeing in the industry. You'll see in the top right a garbage truck, and it's actually branded with the Jersey City logo from my previous job. We were very proud in Jersey City to be one of the first cities to have fully electric, battery electric garbage trucks in the United States. And at the time, a few years ago, there really wasn't an option. And companies, we actually worked with the Chinese company BYD, who was building an electric chassis, heavy-duty chassis that then could be configured and customized to do stuff. And so we asked about a garbage truck option and putting just the back of it, which is the garbage truck piece, on that chassis. And we made it work. And they're out there and they're running around. And you think about the impact from a truck, a diesel truck. Those things, garbage trucks, typically older vehicles, very high pollutant, and also they're in every single neighborhood of any city all the time. So when you're talking about the direct impact of reducing emissions, those heavy-duty trucks, those garbage trucks are the way to do it. So yeah, we're rolling out 45 electric cars for the fire department. We've got a garbage truck on the way in Kansas City. Had a few in Jersey City. You'll see a lot of different departments of the city releasing those, rolling out those electric cars. Trees. So yes, these are cell phone pictures from my yard, and you may be asking, why are you taking pictures of your yard? Well, we've got this very ambitious goal in Kansas City to plant 10,000 trees in 3 years, and cities like Chicago and New York are doing more than that. But not many cities are cities like Chicago and New York, and so we're a mid-sized city, and we're scrappy, and most cities are like this. And so 10,000 trees is a lot. 3,000 or 4,000 a year, that's a lot of trees to be planting. Think about the environmental benefits and the impact from that. It's about pulling carbon out of the air, but it's also about retaining moisture. It's about heat and keeping neighborhoods cooler. And there's a lot of studies that suggest that trees and greenery reduce crime in a lot of ways, which is not a topic of this conversation. But we're being innovative and creative with how we're going to get these trees planted. Yes, of course, we can go out with our own crews and just plant trees in certain places, but we're also giving away free trees to residents, anyone who wants one in Kansas City. We've got to sign up kcmo.gov/free trees. For any of you who live in Kansas City, I don't know if anyone does. Please sign up and get your trees. I signed up and I got 2 trees. And these are the 2. The right one is a tulip tree, the left is a birch. And I love them very much. They're my new children. But I water them twice a week, 3 times a week sometimes. And it was so easy to plant them. And what's great about it is now we're building ownership and buy-in and knowledge of what's going on. It's not just the city doing something without anybody else really knowing about it. We've got people all over the city who are signing up for this, planting their tree, talking about it. And then that conversation continues. Well, why? Why are we doing this? Listing all the benefits, then talking about other sustainability initiatives and having ownership of their own city. People love to be a part of change and doing stuff. Not everybody, but the people who do love this kind of stuff. And so it's less work for a city, and it's just a matter of a truck dropping off trees at people's houses. And we go from there. We do a little bit of education around it. But you think about trees as being part of your infrastructure, of a city at least. They're part of the landscape. They're part of the environment. They are helpful for stormwater retention. They're helpful for air quality, all those things. And so big arguments to be made for trees being a part of infrastructure. Streetlights, another cell phone picture. Sorry, I think what's great about Kansas City is we're all so into ourselves in a good way. And people love just to take pictures of stuff that we're doing. And I do too. And so I took this picture because I was so excited one day. I was picking up dinner one night and I saw one of our new streetlights on the right compared to one of the old ones on the left. And I just had to take a picture. I was so excited about it. But we're in the process of converting all of our 100,000 streetlights in Kansas City to LEDs. And the one on the right is the LED. And the one on the left is high pressure sodium, the old orange glow kind of streetlights that you see. And as I said before, this is not a new idea. Everyone's probably got LED light bulbs in their house. And many cities around the country and the world already have this, but we didn't in Kansas City. And what a amazing impact that it's having on our city already. We started about a year and a half ago. We estimate that we're going to save $5 million a year from lower energy costs and maintenance costs. LED bulbs, the high pressure sodium lasts 5 years, 5 or 7 years. Maybe an expert can tell me that's wrong, but LEDs will last 10 years at least. And there are some studies suggesting maybe even 20 years. Think about how much less you have to change these bulbs, how much they cost to change, a couple $100 each. That cost adds up. The LEDs also use about 50% less energy with brighter light. You can kind of see in the picture that it is brighter. So using less energy, less maintenance costs. And also just a nicer, more natural color and feel to the lights. So it actually is making your city look nicer. And there's better lighting in areas. There's crime reduction. You feel safer when you're walking around because the lights are better. It's not that weird orange glow. But huge, huge cost benefit. And that's where this project started, actually, as a cost reduction strategy. It was a COVID-related project. When COVID started and a lot of us were getting crushed with the economic downturn, we were thinking, how do we save money? And LED streetlights was a way. We spend about $13 million a year in Kansas City on streetlight energy and maintenance costs. And to cut $5 million out of that is phenomenal. And so that's how it started. But because of the reduced energy usage, we calculated that this project is the equivalent of taking 6,000 cars off the road every year in Kansas City. 6,000 cars just from changing light bulbs out because it's such a large scale. What an amazing sustainability and environmental benefit just from changing light bulbs. And yes, infrastructure improvement, something that is so obvious, I think, to all of us, but not everyone's doing it. And so that's our job to do these types of things. Building energy codes. So we just passed some of the strongest building energy efficiency codes that we've got. It's the latest version of the international standard for building codes and energy efficiency. And what's, again, like not rocket science. Somebody else made these codes. We're merely adopting them. We didn't create them from scratch. And not to minimize anything that our staff has done, but a lot of cities are not quite at this point just because there's pushback. Construction costs have been rising. Housing development has slowed down because of the economic impacts of the pandemic. And so, we're trying to find a way to balance all of those things. We're trying to make sure that we're thinking about the future of our city. We're thinking about energy costs for future residents and existing residents. We're thinking about energy usage for additional new housing units and where things are going to go from here. And we're trying to balance all that. We're trying to make sure that we can continue development and also make sure that development is responsible and that it meets the needs of growing cities and future generations. And one thing that's really interesting about this, it's sort of like the electric vehicles, where yes, the upfront cost is higher to build a house with more insulation and different types of materials that's more energy efficient, but your energy costs are astronomically lower. And so maybe there may not even be a net increase in the cost of that house, of the useful life of that house, or over a 20-year span. And so that's what's really exciting about this. And then transit is the last one here. Transit is something that people forget about as being sustainable and a sustainability initiative a lot. When you talk about sustainability, you talk about water conservation and electricity usage and carbon emissions. But think about on the left is our streetcar track. We're doing an extension of a streetcar light rail. We don't have any heavy rail in Kansas City yet, although we literally yesterday released an RFP for heavy rail to and from our airport, which I just took from O'Hare to get here. And it's phenomenal. But think about that. What's the alternative to rail? It's getting in a car. And often it's a single driver, a single occupant, or a Lyft or an Uber. And so that's taking cars off the road. It's also cheaper to ride, usually. Obviously, it's more expense for us as a city to build rail, but it allows people to get around without a car. And so you're automatically, no matter what, reducing carbon emissions because there's just one less car on the road, or many less cars on the road because people are taking mass transit. Bike lanes, another one. It's a way that we're increasing and improving infrastructure to allow for other modes of transportation. We did 30 miles of protected bike lanes in the first 2 years of adopting Vision Zero, which is an initiative that cities do all over the country, which we commit to eliminating deaths and serious injuries on our roads. But there's a sustainability component to this. In addition to just creating safe ways and places for people to ride a bike, you're riding a bike and you're not driving a car, or you're driving an e-scooter, a bird scooter, or some kind of electric powered vehicle on those bike lanes. It's a safe place to do it. It encourages and fosters that type of movement, and it removes cars from the roads. And I'd say also, nowhere are we saying that you must ride a bike or you must ride a streetcar or a train, but it's allowing people the option. Not everyone's going to want to plant a tree in their backyard. But for those who do, let's give them that option. And let's support and encourage people to take sustainability seriously and to behave in a different way that allows for a more positive environment for everybody. Micromobility is another one with the e-scooters. The bike lanes help with that as well. All these types of transit options are super helpful. And in a city like Chicago, it's easy to understand how they work. And you walk around Chicago, or you might take the train, you might ride on a bike, and it all makes sense. There are a lot of cities around that are not Chicago or New York, and we are able to create these things from scratch. And what's been great about, my last point here, I guess, what's been great about Kansas City for me is that this has been an opportunity to do all these things at a place that doesn't have these things. When I got to Kansas City, there was maybe 1 mile of protected bike lanes. We had no electric vehicle. We had a couple of electric vehicles. We had, we didn't do anything with our streetlights. We had no big solar array. So we get to do all this stuff. And I think that's the theme here, is that cities need to be doing this stuff. These ideas are all out there. Nothing you've seen here, I don't think, is anyone in this room, I don't think, is saying, I've never heard of that. You've probably all seen a bike lane and all seen a solar panel, but cities have the ability and sort of the duty to do these things at a large scale to provide benefit to people. So with that, I'm done, I think, right? Okay. Thank you so much, and hope you enjoy the rest of your day.